Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we start the meeting, just two quick announcements. First one is the governor signed legislation extending the authority of public bodies to hold public meetings remotely and without in-person access until the end of the state's COVID-19 disaster emergency. Declared, let's see, anything else in here? Until that time, public bodies can continue to hold meetings, one, in person without permitting the public to attend in person, or two, remotely by conference call or similar service. In either case, the public must be able to view or listen to the meeting, and the meeting must be recorded and later transcribed. Okay, so pretty much the same as it's been going. That's kind of a blanket coverage going forward. I guess instead of going month to month, she's going to keep it till the emergency's declared over. The second one is I just want to go over a couple of the rules of participation again that we read last week. Public comments will be permitted at the end of the presentation. Comments should be accepted in the following order: town board, participants, invited participants, general public. All comments are limited to the subject being discussed. The town board shall have the first opportunity to raise questions and comments. All comments should be addressed directly to the board and not to any other member of the public. And the board or presenter may choose whether or not to respond to a comment or question. Okay. All right, so we'll start the meeting with Amber with our COVID update.
Yep. The official number of COVID cases on Shelter Island to date since it started is 129. So that's up 4 this week, which last week we were up 10. So it's nice to see the increases starting to trend down. And the Suffolk County 7-day positivity rate, at rolling average is 19.2%. So that's down 7.2% from a week ago. So we're going on the downside of the curve, which is.
Amber, do you think with all the home tests that the percentages follow through? Is it a true number, or we don't really know because the people with the home tests don't report it to anybody?
Right, the home tests aren't reported to anybody. I think people who do test positive at home are advised to go and get a PCR test to get an official confirmation, because there can be problems with the home testing kits. But whether or not people do follow through on that is unclear. But
okay,
we have to go with the numbers that are officially given to us. We speculate a little bit, but it's just that speculation.
And we reopened the Fit Center today for 6 participants at a time with masks. They have to wear masks. We're opening up the recreation classes, same thing with masks, and the Friday and Saturday night open gym following the school's protocol. And Amber, I believe tomorrow we have a meeting with the recreation department just to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yes, yeah, and we'll be reevaluating it weekly at this point.
Okay, next on the list, I just want to remind everybody that the blood drive that was scheduled for this week has to be rescheduled. So we'll wait and let you know when that's going to be. Disappointing, but better be safe than sorry. Okay, next thing on the list, I have town code definitions and the next steps. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page, where we're going with the process. I know we've had a lot of input from the public. And Bob, you want to walk us through how you see the next steps going?
Yeah, I think the next step on this, having spoken to a number of board members, is that I'm in the process of going through each of the letters that came in somewhat of detail and putting together a summary for the board of what's been brought up and what's been discussed. What I wanted to know from the board at this point is sort of the format they wanted in. Did you want to keep it in that sort of the format it is now with just the comments from the individuals added? Do you want to know who made the comment or just that the comment was made? those kind of, those were pretty much my two primary questions.
I don't think we need to know who made the comment.
I think it might be better for a evaluative if you keep the personalities out of it
Right.
and just look at the comment on its own value.
Mhm. Okay, BJ, any thoughts? I know you've been diving into this.
In terms of format, should we switch over to an Excel format because it's going to be columns? Is that what you were just saying, Bob? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide if you would like to see it in more of an Excel format, or if you like that what we have right now with the way we did basically the red line, where we had what the proposal was, and then what the current was, and then I'd add maybe in another color under that what the recommendations were.
I think you got to go to columns. I think you're going to run out of colors. And I think it would be, that would be, sort of what we have, what we corrected, maybe what we started with, what we corrected.
And we can drag and drop things, so it's not that big a deal.
Right.
All right, so I'll do it I'll put it into Excel. I guess once the town board takes a look at that, we can kind of figure out where to go from at that point. But I think it's best if you see that before we delve into what's next.
Okay, and you'll have that for us before next week.
I was expecting next week, but I wasn't sure if there's something else going on next week that.
No. Actually, I'd prefer to do that Tuesday the 1st, because next week we were going to go back to the sewage treatment discussion.
No problem. I'm not going to argue with more time.
Okay. Anything else on this one?
Jerry, I would just, I don't mind the process the way it's going. I think it's, better that we take it one step at a time and make sure that we get this right. So somewhere along the line, when we finish with the emailing back and forth and making comments, I still would like, and maybe COVID will cooperate with us in February, where we can meet, spread around town hall with select number of people that are very well versed in, in these definitions and have been participating in this, and actually have an exchange, as we move to a final copy. I just like the fact that, especially where we identify the more important definitions, that there's real consensus. Again, when you ask, board members, we're not lawyers, and you have a lot of talent within this town to be able to pick and choose, and they have been participating in the process thus far. I would just like to have them in the final stages, sit down with Bob and go through this, whether it's done, via Zoom, or whether we can actually do it in person by that time. I just would like to see that, and then handed that final copy back to the board for our final analysis. But I want to get it done right. And I want to make sure that everybody, especially those people with, that are well-versed in these kinds of definitions, have an opportunity to, review them just one more time collectively.
Bob?
I think that's something we should discuss as a legal matter in the executive session.
Okay. Yeah, I think, just off the top of my head, I think the way we've set it up to solicit comments from the public and for Bob to sort them out and present it to us, I think that's enough of a start. I'm not. We'll talk about the legal.
I'm not disputing the start, and I'm thinking that you can get 85% of the way through this and come up with a very good document. I just would like somewhere along the process. Now, if you want to keep that just within the town board as our function to be able to do that, I can buy into that. I just think when you look at the degree of expertise that you have with, these 4 or 5 individuals that have been, very much involved with this since the beginning, that, I just feel more comfortable, having them part of the process. If you'd like to discuss it in executive session, I'm happy to do so.
Okay, I just, before we end on this, I just want to say, I've said numerous times and I'll say it again, we don't govern by committee. The town board we're involving the public to give us their comments. The town board will put something together, then we'll bring it to the public and all those people are invited to discuss it at that time. So, I mean, that's the way I feel. I don't know, BJ or Amber, you have different thoughts on it, but
Yeah, I think that is a good way to go about it, only because I feel like a lot of work was put into what was already submitted. We'll take it under consideration. Bob will prepare the document, we'll discuss it, and then we have to have a public hearing, and that's the way forward. It shouldn't, I mean, I'm saying not just to limit it to these people who, jumped in at this point. It's a public hearing.
I'm not suggesting limiting it.
Oh.
I just wanted this to be another part of the process to ensure that we in fact have gotten the best advice and a lot of input on this to make sure that it was right. I'm not looking to circumvent the town board or the
No.
process itself or the hearing. But listen, I'm one of 5 people. I'll honor whatever you guys decide to do.
No, I wasn't saying you were circumventing, seeking to do that. All I meant was it's already an onerous process.
It is.
And I'm not sure I want to add to that. That's sort of my, as not to come across as lazy, but to come across as overworked.
Amber?
I'm agreeing with BJ. I think it's, there's a lot going, a lot's going into this. And I'm afraid that we'll get bogged down further if we have like a mini public hearing on it and then the real public hearing on it. I mean,
Okay.
we'll share all of the documents so everyone has an opportunity, those who have submitted information and recommendations and comments so far, as well as, I'm sure there'll be some new people coming forward as well to look at this.
Okay, so that's going to be on for February 1st work session. Okay, next on the agenda is the main topic for today. It's the West Neck Water, Suffolk County Water Authority Operating Agreement. Lisa Shore and Joe Fenora are here. Lisa, I don't know if you want to walk us through it. I know there's highlighted portions that we need to make sure we understand before we finalize, or before we meet with Suffolk County Water to finalize this with some concerns. Your members have some, we have some, Joe has. So I don't know, how do you want to proceed with this, Lisa?
Well, it was my hope that the town board members would have reviewed some of our comments. And because we pretty much put down our considerations that we want the town board to look at and help define and clarify. So that's my hope, is that you will have done that. And after that point, that then we can go to Suffolk County Water Authority and say, okay, these are the clauses that we have issue with. They need to be clarified or restated in some way. So that was what I was hoping would happen today.
Okay.
I assume you all have the,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I suggest we go
Can I-
page by
Yeah.
page.
I just want to ask one thing. Lisa, you had sent something around, and then Joe, you had sent something around. Is that the same document?
Yes,
Or were there, okay, I just wanted to be sure because I was worried that I was looking at the wrong one.
yes, I received that from Lisa, and Lisa and I spoke yesterday confirming that the file which was shared is the most updated copy.
Okay.
So
thank
Joe,
you.
the only question I have, just going, I see we have, questions in red, but also the orange highlight. Who's the orange highlight? Whose concern is that?
I'm not sure whose they are specifically. They represent different folks who have participated. For instance,
Oh, okay, no, I just want to, okay, all right.
that BJ, I know, added some comments in blue, and the West Lake Water Board has included their own comments in red and yellow. But in totality, this is the comprehensive list of comments submitted. And I think the only member of the town board who's added to that officially is BJ. If I may be wrong, but that's my understanding.
Okay,
Gary, if I could, since I was the one who edited it, I could sort of understand of what the highlighted is. So the parentheses or the parenthesized comments are questions.
Mhm.
The red without the highlight is what we would like to see as a part of the clause. It's an amendment or substitution or something. The yellow is refers to questions that are asterisked, usually after that, in the following that paragraph. So that's the setup, more or less. Anything that's in a parentheses is a question or a comment
gotcha. Yep.
from someone.
Okay. So I guess the first issue we come up with is operation and maintenance 1.2.
Yep.
Right at the top of the page, Jerry, that the date is wrong. It should be 22 rather than 21.
No, it's 28.
No, I'm not above that where it says red line,
Oh.
11021,
Oh, I see.
11022.
Gotcha.
Who's-
Thanks.
Who's going to be capturing these edits as we're going through this document today?
Well, I can. You know, I have the version if you want me to, or if a town board representative wants to do this.
Who's the who's the clerk to the West Neck Water?
Coco.
Okay.
Coco is
I
who's
do not
on?
believe.
Lisa, do you have a
Christina's
Word
on
version
today.
of this? I think everybody else has it in PDF.
I'm sorry?
I haven't. Do you want me to send it to you now?
Whatever, just so you need the Word version to kind of keep track of things. So if you're going to do it, that's fine. If you'd like me to do it, I'll do it.
It matters not to me. Somebody make a decision. I don't care.
Why don't you go ahead and do it that way? You make sure you get it the way you want it.
Right. Okay. Okay.
All
So
right. Before Jerry, I had a comment on the third paragraph down. It says, whereas the town is the owner of the public water supply system. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's the next one down. The parties desire to provide for the operation. It says fee-based delivery of water by the authority. Nowhere is authority defined. So we should change that to SCWA. So anywhere there's authority, it has to get replaced.
Okay.
all right. Do you want me to go through this or would you?
Yeah, I think so, Lisa.
Okay.
Yeah. And if something like just that one that Amber had before you get to your next one, if anybody wants to interject, go ahead.
Yeah, the next paragraph, I also wanted to change it to, instead of the surcharge amount is set forth herein, I wanted to say is set forth in paragraph 7.1, because I went looking for it. So why not make it easy for everyone to find it?
Say it again. Say that part again.
So the second one, whereas the authority, which then becomes Suffolk
Right.
Water, the surcharge amount is set forth in paragraph 7.1.
Oh, okay.
All right, 1.2, the Suffolk County Water Authority agrees to operate, maintain, and repair. I highlighted at its own cost and expense. The question was, is that covered in the management fee? Okay, is that clause at its own cost and expense? Is that part of the management fee? Do we want to stipulate that? And make that more
Yeah,
definitive?
I think we need, I mean, I assumed it was, but yeah, I think we need to, Joe?
So the language might say, and repair at its own cost and expense as
That's covered in the management.
covered in the management fee. Yeah, just exactly as is.
Doesn't that seem contradictory? Not to, I don't want to argue every point in its minutia, but at its own cost and expense would seem to me to be not in a management fee. It's at its own cost and expense.
That's my understanding as well, is that they have the
Right.
flexibility to, replace broken components, and they're responsible for the cost in that it's not relevant to the management fee. We pay that management fee separately, and they bear the burden of those costs. I
Yeah.
guess ultimately, yes, it's covered by the management fee. That's how they set the management fee, but that they're not necessarily directly related.
If you're looking to make sure that it's not like, included to increase rates, you could do at its own cost and expense, with no charge, without charge back to the West Neck Water District or something like that.
All right, so why don't we highlight that to talk to Joe Piconi? That's one of our, need the clarification on.
Okay. Page 2, and this would be item number 1, 2, next paragraph. Advise the CWC of all defects and conditions known to the town that affects the operations, plant, water storage, and distribution system. Question, which currently crosses private property, real property. That was put in because the current distribution system is not on public property, it's on private property.
Right.
I don't know if that is a different legal, if that needs to be reworded to cover that part of the distribution system is also on public and private property.
I don't think that's important.
Mm.
I don't see how it would change the meaning of that sentence.
Do we need to define that it's not?
I don't see it as
public
as a necessity, but I also don't see where it would hurt anything to point that out.
Okay, so we can leave that in.
Okay, so I'll just, which currently crosses public and private property.
Right.
Would that be sufficient?
Yes,
Yes.
I think so.
Okay. 1.3, my question or comment is, well, the Suffolk County Water shall be the sole supplier of water within the district during the term of this agreement or any extensions thereto. What if customers reactivate old or dig new wells? What is the option for customers that have connections to West Neck Water District and their own well? Revenue would be affected if this option is extended. And the reason I brought this up is because when we were formed, we were advised by the Suffolk County Department of Health that it was mandatory for all customers that were adjacent to the district to be on a public water supply. Can we force people? No, we cannot force people, but the health department heavily influences that decision. However, we do have customers who have what they call, I guess Suffolk County calls it a stub service. The water line comes to the property line, but the customer doesn't activate that connection because they have a private well on their own property. We currently have a vacant lot that was sold and is now construction is happening, and there is a well on that property. Can that property owner activate their well and use it? So I just think that this is something that it has to do with language between the Suffolk County Health Department and the Suffolk County Water Authority. I think that this may be a question for them. If nobody else really
Lisa,
has.
can I jump in here? I have some
Sure.
context to this. I'm not familiar, and I don't believe that the health department mandates anybody take public water, even if it's available to them. I believe, and we discussed this a week or so ago, their requirements pertain to people who have wells and public water, so that you can't commingle. If you're taking public water, you can't have an independent private well on your property feed the same dwelling. This is likely a rule that Suffolk County Water has as part of their own operating procedures. So you can't have both public water supply and private wells. I think your question is very relevant here as to what happens if somebody wants to disconnect from service.
Right, that's my,
And that's how we should frame the context of this. For instance, if you have a private well on your property that you use for irrigation or some ancillary purpose, you're still able to do so. You just can't provide private well service to the same home that you have public water service for sanitary reasons, so that there's no crossover.
Mhm.
But to your point, to your point, the problem is relevant to the pricing of the capital improvements and the rates. If customers drop out, what happens then? And that's what we should see clarification on. But for the record, there's no obligation that I'm aware of for parcels to take public water if it's available in their neighborhood. So I don't think we have to be concerned about that aspect.
Yeah, I'm just saying what was told to us.
Sure,
by
yeah,
the-
I know that there are.
Okay, I just put Joe P next to that one. Let's just get a clarification from him that,
Yeah.
we understand exactly what, Suffolk County Water understands. Okay,
Do we need to word that though? I mean, just because I'm thinking of someone who does have like an irrigation well, like that they are allowed to keep it, or if there's a future expansion.
The rules for this, Amber, are likely already explained in Suffolk County Water's own policy.
Okay.
So, and I think there's contract language that says that we're subject to their rules and regulations.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, I think the question is for Joe to get, what is their policy on that and what's their policy on disconnections?
hey, Lisa.
Okay, moving down to 2.1, I redlined the costs to what we had been told by Suffolk County Water, $1,700,000 worth of capital improvements. And then the next sentence, currently the proposed capital improvements are included and will be prioritized as set out in Exhibit B attached here too, because we had discussion about which of the projects would go first. What would they spend the money on first? And in an Exhibit B, that's a priority list of what project will begin. The actual capital improvements made to the district water supply and distribution may differ. I highlighted that. Flexibility with regard to what may come up in regulations for testing in the future. And also as they look at the system and look at the projects, what Suffolk County Water Authority may deem needs to be done in addition to what they laid out in their project infrastructure, in their project proposal.
Just a question.
So I just, the main differ that would be for Joe Corney. Sure.
The priority list, is that an agreed priority list between West Neck Water and the Suffolk County Water Authority? Did you guys sit down and agreed on that priority list, or are they two separate lists? How does that work?
Well, we didn't necessarily agree on the chronology of it. We agreed that what had to be done in conversation with Joe Picorni when he laid out what the priorities were. I agreed with him verbally.
Yeah, I knew that part, but the chronology part of it is also equally important about what's going to be done first, second, third down the road. Do you work towards some type of agreement with that in terms of how that capital plan unfolds?
Yes, we should definitely have it in writing. Absolutely.
Hey, Lisa, the 1.7 million, was that all that going to be done in 5 years?
There is some different language about this over the last couple of months. There was a 5-year term where the project infrastructures were going to be completed within. Then there was also talk about within 2 years. I'm not sure, Amber or Joe, if you have a recollection, if the conversation was that all of this would be within 2 or 5 years, but it is within 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct? Am I correct in that?
That seems reasonable. But the priorities can change too. I'm not sure we want to set them in stone. I mean, there has to be some recognition that there's expertise there and the priorities are what they look like from this vantage point, but then you get a year and a half in and things have changed. And so the priorities shift a little. So, I mean, do you know what I'm saying in terms of how we word this? Not that I'm a lawyer.
No, I can see that happening, BJ, but I just didn't want to see, Suffolk County Water moving in one direction where the West Neck 70 customers are saying, why are you doing that first? There should be some type of discussion with the idea that there's some flexibility built in because obviously things change, pipes break, things deteriorate, but just that there's some kind of common thread. And
We've had
again,
some preliminary discussions about their priorities. It looked like they wanted to do the distribution system replacement as early as this year. A couple of these capital improvement items require different lead times. For instance, there's some regulatory negotiating that has to go on with regard to well number 7. But the general consensus was they'd be moving fairly quickly on all of these, with the distribution system likely being finished before
okay,
before this summer. But those have only been loose discussions, so we can ask for a schedule of capital improvements, and I think that would be prudent to put it in writing. The other thing, Jim, that you mentioned is, did we agree to these, or did we negotiate them? The capital improvements that they present are not negotiable. We can add to them, but this is a minimum investment that they require for us to take this agreement.
yeah, that was my understanding, yeah.
I have a question. The description of what the 1.7 million, is comprised of is rather vague. And I wondered whether or not we wanted something more detailed. I'm just thinking in terms of, are we getting our money, our money's worth? The ratepayers are going to pay this out over, with a substantial increase. And, construct well number 7, I guess that's, replace distribution system is more like, what does that mean exactly? So I just thought a little bit more detailed.
Yes, I think that we're all working off of is the billing analysis that actually you submitted, Amber, which lays out the capital improvements funded to well number 7, completion of water mains, install meters and vaults, and reconfigure electric system. So that is what the fund covers. I'm not sure if I'm understanding you. Did you wanted either more clarification?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. It just was like, we're spending $1.7 million and we've got a really light description here. And maybe it's just me because I'm always want to know what the details are of numbers.
I would agree that details are better than keeping it open and having questions about it, for sure.
Mhm.
I would certainly agree with that. I think it should be laid out a little bit better than it is.
Yeah. And of course, there needs to be flexibility, because as they go in and start to do things, they're the experts and they'll know what modifications need to be made. But I just would have a little bit more comfort level than what's here on paper right now.
Okay. And then there needs to be language that capital expenditures don't exceed the 1.7 million. This 1.7 shall not be less than, and if it makes less than in the first 5 years, the surcharge amount set forth in paragraph 7 will be recalculated to reflect the cost of the capital improvements. I'm going to defer to Amber on the recalculation of that.
So the only concern with that one, Lisa, is, as BJ said, what if something comes up that, wasn't planned and, it's over and above everything we planned on?
I think that 1.7 million, we have to cap it at something, Jerry, because the residents can't afford to add to that. I think that
the language needs to reflect that expenses beyond 1.7 are not to be applied to the surcharge, because presumably over the life of this contract, there'll be additional capital improvements required. But I think what sounds like you want to differentiate the surcharge for this initiative.
It seems to address that in 3.2. Where it says, in its sole discretion, at its own cost and expense, make replacements, additions, betterments, improvements, blah, blah. So that seems to answer, unless I'm misreading it.
Right.
That's, I think, in the future, it's after this 1.7 million, but I did think there needs to be something that caps the initial improvements at the 1.7.
The language indicating that it will not be less than 1.7 is to protect our side, so that that they will make the full capital investment and not charge you a surcharge, but not actually spend all of the money.
Right.
But I don't think this was written in the sense that they wanted you to stop at 1.7, because they're under the impression that if they exceed 1.7, that's on their dime.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's legally understood.
There's no
Mhm.
problem with putting that in the terminology that you should not exceed 1.7, and if it does,
Yeah,
it doesn't apply to the surcharge. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so expenses beyond 1.7 do not apply to surcharge.
Right, Lisa, that's what we're trying to protect against?
Yes, we are.
In
We're trying to
excess
cap
of-
it.
Right.
Yeah.
What happens if it comes in under, Lisa? What happens if it comes in at 1.6 or 1.5?
That's covered in that
Okay.
paragraph.
All right.
Yeah, and also then our our surcharge will be readjusted,
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
which leads to the next comment, which is extremely important, that the district receives an annual report of amortized capital improvement expenditures on February 28th of each year. We did talk about that with them. And so if anybody wants to reword that language, but I think we definitely need, I would prefer to have it biannually, but at minimally, we should have a report of our capital improvement expenditures every year. So does anyone think it needs to be more frequent, quarterly,
No, I
biannually?
don't. No, I think annuals.
And I
Okay.
think my notes had, we would get an accounting each year for 5 years, because the improvements will all be done by the end of 5 years. And beyond that, we don't need to, receive any more reports on our infrastructure investment.
4 or 5 years. All right.
Okay.
Jumping down to 3.2, any other questions, comments? No?
No,
3.2, the SCOA may, in its sole discretion and at its own costs and expenditures. And so I asterisk that, and should the town board, our comment, should the town board have a voice in these decisions, given potential effects on the aquifer and land use? I think this is very broad at its sole discretion. Make replacements, additions, betterments, and improvements, or abandon any portion of the water supply and distribution system now existing or heretofore formed, definitely within the district. That's got to be stipulated so that it doesn't apply to any land or anything outside of the district.
Mhm.
So I don't know if the sole discretion is a clause that you want to keep in there without any
I think-
town input.
I think what you asterisked and highlighted should be somewhere almost in the very beginning, Bob. Should the town board should have a voice in decisions with potential effects on the aquifer and land use.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know where you'd put it, but I think that should be stated fairly early on.
Yeah, I mean, let me see where.
Yeah, it comes up in other clauses, Jerry.
Right.
So this could be in the beginning, but I think that we've made amendments to include this activity or the town board participation in other clauses. So by the end, perhaps we can see if it needs to go at the beginning or if it's
Okay.
sufficient.
I think that may also be important enough to put it in its own little section, like, 1.5 or something like that.
Okay, 1.5.
This particular clause, though, relates only to the district boundaries. I'm not really sure I see the concern about the town board having a voice with this particular clause. I see this as them having the latitude to, abandon non-productive wells and install a new one so that they can meet the district's demand, not so that they can find additional supply for anybody outside of the district. Is my interpretation off with this, or?
No, I agree, Joe, which is why I wanted to move it to a more generalized section.
Okay.
Now, I also wondered about adding the language within the district, because if we needed a new well and we're putting it, on town property, like, right now we're doing them on the golf course, that's not technically within the district. So
That's got to be included in the map, though. Yeah.
although I thought the district map was for who could hook up, whereas we're getting wells from outside of the district.
We talked about amending that district map to include the wells off of the distribution system map. We have this discrepancy already where the supply, some of the supply wells are not within the actual district boundary. So we spoke with Suffolk County Water at the last meeting about amending that map to represent those supply wells being outside, because as it stands, we would be in conflict with this language. So there needs to be an amendment no matter what.
Okay, so then within the district is good, but then what do we do if we need a well that's outside of the district? Because
Could add language, Amber, that essentially says any infrastructure to be located outside of the boundaries of West Neck Water District that requires town board approval.
okay, I like that.
Can you repeat that?
Any infrastructure
Right.
to be added outside of the West Neck Water District
Mm-hmm.
requires town board approval.
Yes. Okay, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that as we go through here, because there are questions
Okay.
in another clause about exactly this issue. All right, and it was really just a grammatical preference I had between in and within. That's the only reason I put that in there. I don't think technically it makes any difference.
Yeah, I was on the next one, at least the next red marked one.
I see, okay. So do we want to keep that may determine within the district? The reason we want to be very definitive about the language, and even if it's every clause, make sure that within the district is stipulated, so there's nothing open or possibility of going to another part of the island to draw water or site without town board and town participation. So that's one district, to be very specific about that. Okay. The asterisk, legal title to such replacements, et cetera, and the question is, are all properties right-of-way easements and uses securely titled? We had a question about this before at the meeting with regards to easements, and the easement, like for example, to the well, pump house itself. Is that secure? Is that a secure entitlement?
I looked into the deeds and there was nothing on any of the deeds with regard to an easement for West Neck Water. There were some access deeds or access easements for neighbors. Now, the only other way that there might be an easement is if there's some document that it's in the West Neck Water files that's for some reason didn't get filed with the county.
So what do we do about that?
I was just someone needs to sort of check the files and see if there's anything in there with regard to any easements on those pieces of property.
I mean, this is a legal matter, I think, between the town and Suffolk County Water Authority,
Mhm.
and they may require you to do so. I'm just putting it in there because there has been nothing produced that legally gives us entitlement to that easement or that right of way.
Yeah.
The 3.3 and the entire property of the West Neck Water District, because. All right, I'm going to read it. The town agrees that the Suffolk County Water Authority shall be entitled to the use, occupancy, and possession of all of the water supply and distribution facilities and of the entire property of the West Neck Water District. And I crossed out town associated with the water supply system.
Mhm.
That's big. So again, it's just really defining this as to what we're referring to.
Right.
Yes, all right. If we jump down to 4.1, service connections, again, putting district in to reiterate.
Yep.
And then exhibit C, they're subject from change from time to time. What, when are notifications of rate increases and or any forthcoming fees made to the district? So that would be a question for SQA. How do they send their notifications of rate increase out and fees that they determine will be made? How is that information dispensed? So that's a SQA question. All right, going over to page.
Can I just want to go back up to 3.4, all water main extensions. So someone if there's a vacant parcel and they decide to build a house, are they required to hook up? That's when I was reading that section, I wasn't sure how that all fits together. It kind of goes along with what I had asked earlier with respect to irrigation wells. And do you know the answer to that, Joe?
You're asking if somebody within the district develops a
Mhm.
property that's not, there's no obligation to take service.
Okay, so I guess that would be covered under the rules and regulations then.
They could request service, and that was a subject of conversation when we met with Tim and Joe about new customers, and they indicated that the only new customers this agreement would allow for are those who are currently within the boundaries or within the newly defined boundaries that we submit, who would request service, that don't have service now that would request service. So presumably there's a number of parcels within the district that don't have access to the service, but that live within the district boundaries already.
Sometimes what SCOR will do, this is just anecdotal, is that they will run what they call a stub service to the property or within a certain area. And then it's optional if the resident wants to hook up to it, but that service is there should they decide in the future that they want to hook up to it. Correct, Joe?
Right. And I would actually say if you're spending all this money for a new distribution system, those stub services should be included for any parcels now that are within your district boundary that, may have a desire to hook up in the future. We haven't discussed that as a scope of work item, but it would seem to make sense at this juncture. I don't know. I don't have a feel for how many parcels that is. Do you, Lisa, know how many?
We have, off the top of my head, I think we probably have 4 undeveloped parcels. Like I was talking before, somebody bought and there's a well on that property. So I wasn't sure if the individual decided they wanted to reactivate the well or do they have to hook up to the system. I'd still think I'd like to talk to Jason Heim from the health department and get clarity on this, Joe. I just,
that well was abandoned. I mean, it's not a functioning well.
Yeah. And that's not to say that this resident wants to have a well.
Right. Yeah, let's get clarity from the health department. We can have it in writing, but it's my understanding that you have no obligation to take service. You just can't do both.
Right. Okay. If we go to clause 5.3a, prepare and mail residential and commercial, and I believe BJ, you answered this question. I had been told by someone else that there was no provision for mail in for customers to pay their service online or their bills online. And the reason I say that is because somebody in Deering Harbor had spoken to me about the fact that they had sent in payment, and because the payment got late to SQA and it was posted late, they then were charged a late fee. So, just sort of clarifying for those people who don't want to make sure there is no late fee, can they make online payments? And BJ said, yes, they can. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 5.3c, report all water meter readings, account billing and collected amounts. It doesn't say to whom. Where does that go to? I think we need to say to something, right? We're at 5.3c.
Sure. Yeah, good. I think this is ask for clarification. I would assume this goes to the customer though. So
Okay.
the town will no longer be involved in the billing. So it wouldn't be to us.
Yeah, it just sort of left it off.
Sure.
If we go down to 5D about conducting all necessary water sampling, testing, monitoring, and analyses, regulatory reporting with federal and state laws, rules, and regulations, and ensure water supply and quality complies with the same. the board would like to include language specifying all local, state, and federal agency fines and fees will be paid by Suffolk County Water Authority. They said as much, but I think that that language needs to go in because we've received late fees from the DEC, specifically the latest one being because our map was wrong. So I think that this language doesn't hurt to put in. Yes, no?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, if they don't mind,
Yeah.
I don't see why they'd mind.
No, it's
To
just,
that, to that end, I had a note that circled back to on page 2, or I guess page 2, 3.2.
okay.
It talks about the district in order to provide adequate supply of water at proper pressure to the district. Should we also add quality? Like it's sort of, this is, their mission.
Yep.
We don't care just about quantity, we care about quality as well. And I mean, granted, they're subject to Suffolk County Health Department rules, but.
Yes, but we do get incidences of groundwater.
Mhm.
So
So what are you saying? That proper pressure and quality?
Yes.
quality and supply. And I think proper pressure is, I'm not sure, what is the proper pressure? I don't know. They have a schematic, I'm sure, saying what the pressure should be for the system, given our 4-inch delivery system. So I don't know, does that bother, or does anybody think we need to be more specific about what proper pressure? I'm just going to underline that.
If you want specificity, I'd be more concerned about the specificity of the term quality,
Yeah, I would too.
how that's defined, than I would about the pressure.
Okay. There's
There's probably something in this Suffolk County regs that
Agencies that
defines how the
use
water
that.
quality is measured, and I just don't know it offhand.
Okay, we'll request that. Moving on to 5.3a. We did that. And 5.3c. So I guess
that.
we're now down to 5.4, the last sentence.
Wait, on, well, wait a minute, on 5.3d though, did we already discuss, did I miss the fact that the reports would go to the town and the WAC on the quality?
The reports have to be mailed to all of the customers. So I think we would just request that they also send them to a town representative, which.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, it's just vital. It's just great data to have.
It's also, they're also publicly available. So if we don't get it, we can always, if we don't get it directly, we can always access it.
Yeah, okay, good. Thanks.
I think the proper way to do that is to have it sent to the town clerk, who could then distribute it to those that find it necessary.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, that's a good comment, and maybe we should
Yeah.
update that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was 5D, right? 5.3D?
Yes, excuse
Okay.
me, yes.
5.4, last sentence. Our comments about, we understand that this is all legal language, but we request that it be explained to the layperson, because those of us on the board weren't quite sure about, this is legalese.
This is an indemnity clause. It basically, it says that the Suffolk County Water Authority will cover the town and the West Neck Water Authority if there's any legal actions brought against it, or if there's any lawsuits. This is actually very, it's not even a reciprocal. It's just that they will pay for use. That's a very good thing to have in there.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Great.
6.1, prior to the effective date of this agreement, the town shall furnish the authority with the following information. All of these, A through C, the question was, are they providing this? I know that they worked on the map. And is this provision included in the management fee, or are we paying for someone to do this? The map, up-to-date file of customers, and I've worked with them to, and they really have that, and Joe Fenora is also documentation showing all parcels of land. So I don't know, Joe, what do you think? I don't want to incur cost to the district for this.
Says the town shall furnish.
I'm under the impression we've already provided them with this information, so I don't think there's a need for additional. We can ask them if they can ask them to provide us with a list of anything they feel is outstanding.
All right. And then if we jump down to A, it says into the SQUA's mapping program, and we added, which shall be made available to the district and the town. I think that it's important, not just for this town board, but for the future, that we have a copy of the district. Because that's what has gotten us in trouble in the past. It's why we had to pay a $5,000 fine to the DEC. We didn't have a proper map. On the termination of this agreement, the SQUA shall provide the town with an up-to-date maps of the district system. The question was, this information should be a living document so that current and future town officials and committees are privy to it. So it should be ongoing, like the maps. If they add anything to the maps of in the district, that should be something the town has accessible. Anybody?
I just want some for clarity. Are you looking to just get a copy of the map, or do you want access to their system? Because they're two very different things.
Well, if their system is the only way we can get access to maps, then that would be what we would recommend.
I would expect it to have much less of a problem just giving us the maps than letting anybody onto their computer system.
Well, I don't think we're not looking for that. You know, none of us has the time to wade through that. But as the map is declared, and then if there's an expansion or if there are amendments to the map, it's just it's for the district and to itself and the town to have the latest updated version of the map. And again, I reiterate, it's because we ran into problems with our map that we thought was done and it wasn't. So it's just the importance of being aware of what the district includes and who's in it, who's out, what is on. That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Lisa. And I, so it's as changes are made or annually. You know what I'm saying? Just,
Yes.
And we're due in February 28th. So every February, you're going to send us, how far are you on the capital program and a map of the district, even if it hasn't changed.
All right. Jumping down to 6.3, district is highlighted in red again, just to be specific about what we're talking about. And then on the next page, under 6.3, that's sort of, it describes that. We have included district to set forth in the original formation of the district that only customers of the district are responsible for all goods services associated with West Neck Water District. And then we had another conversation, is using only the town designation in this, like in 6.4, implying a town-wide responsibility. This is for, you, the town board to really answer. Interchanging the town with district is confusing and non-specific, those two terms. And the other hypothetical question, well, it's not a hypothetical, it's a question. Can the district customers expect assistance from the town? And then the other comment was, it was suggested that all taxpayers support services that they do not directly benefit from. Up to this point, West Neck Water has been self-sufficient. We have used, of course, services from the town with regards to legal services and clerical services and engineer services. But we're looking at payback for this loan, and is the town implicit in in this responsibility financially?
I would say we were before Suffolk County Water was involved, so we will be if Suffolk County Water is involved. In other words, the system's always been self-sufficient. I mean, the district's always been self-sufficient, but if for some reason, they couldn't make the bond payments, the town's legally obligated to do it.
Okay,
But the
I
default,
mean, that's my interpretation. Anybody else in mind?
well, I was going to say, but the default interpretation here is that it is the district, the responsibility of those who live within the district. And it's only if there is some sort of rash or raft of default by individual members within the district that the town then might have to step in. Is that what you're saying, Jerry?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the district as a whole. I mean, just as you were speaking, I'm thinking, well, what if one person, doesn't,
Yeah.
backs out, the town's not going to be responsible for that, So I don't know how I understand what you're saying, Lisa, and I do believe the town is ultimately responsible, but we have to make it for the entire system, not piece by piece. And I don't know how you get that out there, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the town of Shelter Island is responsible because because West Neck Water isn't a legal entity in the way that a corporation or something would be. They're really a part of the town. So as such, ultimately, the responsibility falls on the town. That said, it is a water system, and it's fee for use for the customers within the system. So it's essentially self-supporting portion of the town.
But to Lisa's question, can the district customers expect assistance from the town? I would say the district could expect assistance, but I don't think individual customers could.
Ultimately, to the extent that the town wants to subsidize any part of West Neck Water, that would be a town board decision. It'd probably require a public hearing.
The way I'm reading this paragraph 6.3, though, is it's specifically speaking to the debt. So it's not to individual customer obligations. It's just the taking on of the 1.7 million.
The town is ultimately responsible for the debt.
Right.
Yeah, just
Which
as we
we
were.
were, whether or not it was
We always
Suffolk
have
County
been.
Water or our own bond. Right.
Right. Yeah.
okay. So are you satisfied then with all of this?
Yeah.
6.3, yes.
I still think that is a question I'm going to just pose. Let's, for example, say that there are a couple of residents within the district that can't afford the $1,000 leap in surcharge fee. They cannot pay it this year. So what can the district expect something from the town, not necessarily subsidy, but some type of assistance in formulating how certain customers could pay this back?
I would like to see an approach made to some of our organizations like the Lions, the fire department, where help could be given, not even on a loan basis, to somebody who, would then have to maybe, show their need. But I would think that would be the easiest and on this island quickest. I mean, we're pretty responsive when it comes to this sort of thing, way to handle the one or two that might show up. How do you feel about that, Lisa?
Well, I think it's sort of going hand in hand with what's the town's responsibility financially for the district residents.
Well, one thing to remember, Lisa, is that the town is basically going to be out of the billing system here. Suffolk County Water is going to bill the customers directly, and so the debt will be from the customer to Suffolk County Water. So that'll be something that they need to work out amongst those parties.
And there's always the lien against the title, right?
Um,
Which is probably how Suffolk County handles this, is what I'm guessing.
you know,
But
if-
But short of that, I would think these
Turn off your water.
informal avenues. What's that, Joe?
You turn off the water.
Oh, right, darn, yeah.
I was just about to
Yeah.
say, it's like any other utility bill, your,
Yeah.
you know, LIPA, or, you know, PSEG and, you know, fuel
Yes,
oil
but
and things
if
like that.
PSENG came alongside of me and said, okay, guess what? You're paying $1,000 more for your electric this year. I'd be hard pressed to come up with that money. Do you know you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah,
So for some customers, I don't know how they're going to pay this.
right.
Just saying. And I think we'd be irresponsible. if We didn't have this conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I-
Agree with-
Going
agree with
back to the
PG.
going back to the comments that were made about demonstrating a hardship, you know, that has to be spelled out a little bit more, because obviously we don't want to, you know, make it so easy that, you know, people say, well, yeah, you know, now I can pick up $1,000 from this organization or that organization to help pay for my water bill. It's got to be a real hardship, and I think somehow there's got to be some type of mechanism set up for that, where, you know.
Lisa, how has the board handled this in the past? You must have had delinquent accounts historically. What was the general policy? Did you have a written policy for this?
Well, over 90 days, and with correspondence to the delinquent account, we shut the water off, but we haven't been able to do that with COVID. And as you know, we have one customer who hasn't paid their bill in 2 years. They paid some money toward that bill, but we can't collect from that customer. And to put a lien on, as per Bob DiStefano's recommendation to me, to put a lien on is very costly. Liens don't go on for nothing. You know, you have to pay for that.
Well, I mean, with
We
regard to
have done that in
hardship,
the past.
did you have a policy for determining hardships versus, you know, delinquent accounts for people who just weren't paying? How did the board handle previous hardship cases?
Well, we were, you know, we were, I hate to say were, but we have always been a hands-on board. And we've gone to the people who haven't paid their bill, and we've talked to them personally and asked, is there a hardship? We put people on payment plans. That's how we've done it in the past. If they couldn't pay their bill, we gave them an extension, said, okay, can you pay over the next 6 months? Can you pay the balance incrementally? And that sometimes works out. Usually it does work. We've had to put a lien on 2 properties during the whole 25 years that we've been in operation. So that's good. We are, you know, we've always been actively involved in our customers' situations, and we all know one another, but that's not going to be the case with Suffolk County Water. They don't know us.
I would propose that this be a function of the West Neck Water Board moving forward in this new agreement, that they can evaluate these types of hardship cases, since they're familiar with the customer base and could perhaps act as a moderator or liaison between Suffolk Water and the customer in cases like this.
Hey, Joe, I'm thinking that this can't be a new thing to Suffolk County Water.
Sure.
And they
Yeah.
may already have, you know, procedures for these types of things, or
certainly.
programs for these types of things.
Certainly.
And maybe before we reinvent the wheel, we see what they're doing and whether that works for us.
Yeah, certainly. I totally agree. I think to Lisa's point, though, this is about an increase in cost, and I'm wondering if we have a policy on hand where we already work with. But you're absolutely right, Bob. This is not new for an organization like Suffolk County Water, so they'll probably reference us to their rules and regulations, and we can find more information about this.
Yeah, I want to reiterate, this is a substantial 2001% increase for customers.
200.
201%.
But whether it's Suffolk County Water or West Neck Water on its own, it's still going to be there.
It is.
Right.
It is. So.
And I think it's actually a
entering
100%.
into this agreement, and whether if we were self-run and we took a bond out, or Suffolk County Water, as you say, Jerry, we would still have an obligation to the customer to look seriously at how they're going to pay this.
Mhm.
There's no extension. It's not like a 5-year you have 5 years to, get up to that point of paying the surcharge. It's like, bing, you got to pay it this year. That bothers me.
I think this billing question is particularly complicated, and we really need to defer to Suffolk County Water because of the fees that are paid. There are different levels of responsibility for the amount. For instance, the consumption-based fee, the price per 1,000 gallons, that's a fee that Suffolk Water must be compensated for. But in many of these other billing arrangements, the obligation to pay the annual debt, for instance, is between the town and Suffolk County Water. So with regard to not paying your surcharge, there's a different relationship there. Suffolk County Water is happy to and is going to collect those monies through their billing, but ultimately the debt and the rectifying of those accounts is done between Suffolk Water and the town on a quarterly or annual basis. So I think we need to bring this conversation to, this is a great example of what we need to bring to Suffolk County Water because there's a few layers here and there may be responsibilities or opportunities that we don't know about yet. Does that make sense? The consumption part is what the customer has to pay Suffolk Water, but that only represents a small amount of the total fee. And the surcharge is what we suspect will be the hardship for folks. But the surcharge is the responsibility of the town to meet. So there may be some other angles that we're not familiar with yet.
All makes sense, Joe. I think we're right.
All right, so we'll bat that back to Suffolk County Water and
Yeah.
discuss that. 6.4, the town agrees to make vacant town-owned property within the district, again, to the extent it is not needed for other town uses available to SQUA for the use in future wells to supply the district. Parentheses, this is a very broad brush for SQUA well siting, and it brings into consideration possibly SQUA negotiating with organizations or covenanted lands without the town scrutiny or involvement. I think it's important that if the management and the running of SQUA at their sole discretion, if they decide to say, just throw that out, have a conversation with the Nature Conservancy about covenanted lands, all that. Maybe it could never happen, but I'm just thinking down the line, the town needs to be involved and the town's representatives need to be involved with any negotiation that SQUA may have with any organization, private or public, outside of the district. Yes, you think that would be something you want to put in there? Is that?
I think within the district, that pretty much nails it down.
Right. Well, we inserted that because
That's what I mean. Yeah,
Right.
I agree. Yeah.
Future wells to supply the district and other. And make town-owned vacant, so not to raise a touchy subject, but so any town property, no matter what its purpose and use is?
Well, no, again, this is an agreement with the West Neck Water District, so we're not talking town-wide, we're talking about, within the district. So it would be lands within the district.
I would propose we change that first line from within the district to for the district, because we don't want to handcuff them from using a parcel that's outside of the existing footprint to service the existing district.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Joe, especially along New York Avenue. Even if you include the existing wells in the map, you might find yourself going further away, on the golf course than where you are outside the map.
Right. Well, number 7, is a great example. We have to face this circumstance right away, and it may be that the siting of well number 7 does not fall within the district. So I would propose restricting the use of additional town-owned, extending the use of all town-owned properties with our permission to as they see fit for the district, rather than tie them geographically to being within the district.
I like that. But it says also to supply the district and other areas of the town.
That's why we have to get,
Pardon me?
No, that shouldn't be in there.
Right.
No,
Right.
So Lisa, put a line through that.
yes.
So how are we going to reword the agree to make available? Like,
Yeah,
it needs a permission step in there.
Mhm.
yeah.
And then
Well,
I
I
don't,
think Joe said it for the district. To the extent it's needed, is not needed for other town users. For use as future wells to supply the district, period.
Period.
Okay, hypothetical. Let's
Yeah.
say they would like to use Sachem's Woods as a well siting.
Mhm.
Let's just say, for example, you're agreeing within this clause, you're agreeing to permit Suffolk County Water to go in and put a well in Sachem's Woods.
For West Neck Water District.
Yes.
but it seems like it's an automatic in this
Yeah,
language.
I
And
get
that's what I
this,
don't
yeah.
like.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. It's
Well,
vague.
here's the bottom line. If the West Neck Water needs a well, we have to supply it. So
But should we have a voice in as to where that well is sunk? Not just
I
this
think
blanket?
we did say that somewhere earlier that the town,
Oh, did we?
Well, they
I
say
thought
that it's
so.
not needed for other uses. In my mind, that extends to say Sachem's Woods is a recreational area, and therefore we don't permit that as an alternative use.
well, don't
If
say
you don't wanna-
that. We do permit that as an
Oh.
alternative.
If you don't want to draw quite such a hard line as to get, town board approval, then you could add something like in consultation with the town board.
Yes, I think
Agrees,
this
yeah.
this is just this is giving too much freedom without consultation from the town, without anything really from the town, because we're saying, oh yeah, go ahead. You just decide where you want to put a well in for the district. If I was a customer or a taxpayer outside the district, I would be concerned. If there's a well going in next door to my property for another part of the island that,
So could this be in consultation with the town board? The town agrees in consult,
How about just
after
with-
consultation, after consultation?
With town board approval.
Yeah,
Yes.
oh,
with
right.
approval.
That's the hardest line way to do it, or you could do it in consultation with the town board as to location, something like that. It's
I think I go with Amber's approval.
really up to you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah,
So we're
With
taking out in
town board-
other areas of the town, right?
yeah.
Yeah, we're taking that out.
What is the approval process now for a private well being situated on town property?
Suffolk County Department of Health, right?
Or does the town enact any oversight over a resident who wants to install a well for their parcel, for their property on town property? Because we allow that, but I don't know what the
On
process.
town property, yeah, they need to get
It's the highway department,
get permission.
right? It's Brian that has to approve
Yeah.
that. When it's like in a right of way,
Mhm.
that goes to the superintendent, highway superintendent. And I think that's it. I mean, I think his word is final.
Yeah.
So there's some precedence for review of
Yeah,
offering town properties.
yep.
There's also a
I-
small difference between a home well and a distribution well.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. We're talking a different scale.
Mhm. Okay, so rephrase, with town board approval, the town agrees to make vacant town-owned property in the district to the extent it is not needed for other town uses available to squaw for use of future wells to supply the district.
We saying
Yeah.
within the district or for the district?
I don't know.
Joe?
I guess we would have to say for, because then within or in then takes out the possibility
Right.
of anything outside the district.
Yeah, I'm not so concerned where the well is. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what that clause refers to. So I think it could be outside the district and I wouldn't have a problem with it if it was the best place.
Mhm.
Just as a footnote, Jerry, as we move forward, and Joe, according to Jay Card and others, John Cronin, and I think, Joe, you would agree, there's an awful lot of fresh water that we're missing, coming down from a variety of different areas, north, south, east, and west, into the existing well areas that we're missing. So one of the strategies that we might want to take in the future as a town is how can we capitalize on the loss of fresh water that is going into, Ice Pond, Chase Creek, and other areas, because these established wells, if we want to get more longevity out of those existing wells and future well sites along New York Avenue, that's a strategy that we might have to look at, long range. I don't say what has to be done, today or tomorrow, but it's a strategy that we might want to take a look at in planning for the future.
Yep.
Yes, and well siting has implications for wastewater transport, for wastewater, for septic system placement as well. Just
Yeah.
be thinking about that. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So that's a consideration.
Yeah, no question.
All right, if we jump down to 7.2, and we put in the line, the actual amount, the surcharge of, and Amber can vouch for this, $17,077 or $243.96 per customer. That's the annual surcharge.
I have that as 7-1.
Yeah, that is 7-1.
Okay.
It is,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Amber, can you corroborate that amount?
I had checked the 243.96. I hadn't changed it over to an annualized figure.
All right. I'm not sure that both need to be in there, but I just put it there for ease of conversation right now, if you will.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that number. But the
Okay.
243.96 I had already checked.
All right, and then
Excuse me, is that based per customer period, or is it based on, the usage, the way you do your district, Lisa?
No, it's based on customer. That has their surcharge has nothing to do with metered water sales.
Okay.
It's separate.
Yeah, and that's in their Suffolk County rules and regulations. I wasn't 100% sure which one exactly Shelter Island was falling under, because there was Fire Island charges, because there's a water quality fee of $80 per year. Another one had $95 a year, and then there was another place that had $20 per year. So
We're under the Fire Island.
Yeah, I
okay.
thought for some reason 80 stuck in my head.
But we need clarity on that.
Yeah.
And 80 is the Fire Island one.
Boy, it just doesn't seem fair. It really feels like, for, the bigger commercial operator, it should be higher. I don't know.
Well, BJ, to go back, and again, Amber, I'll defer to you. The customer rate per year increase reflect for commercial users will be $7,480. So I'm not really sure if there's a tiered system with regards to, I don't know where we got that breakdown differential from.
Yeah.
So we need to really check that, I think.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
I'm going to just throw that back to Amber and see where those figures actually came from. But I from my conversation, our conversations, it was a fixed fee that had nothing to do with how much water you're pumping, as opposed to metered sales. And our current access fees depend on how much water the commercial, it's tiered. So however much money the commercial, the business is doing, that's what they pay.
Yeah, I need to recalculate those based upon, like, now that we're getting closer to what their charges are.
Yeah.
But it is why we liked keeping the Shelter Island rates versus the Suffolk County water rates, because they don't differentiate the way that we do. And so we are shifting the revenue source to the commercial high users
Yeah.
from the residential.
You just think about the wear and tear on the infrastructure.
Absolutely.
if you use more, you wear and tear it more, that kind of thing.
And then the last sentence in 2.1, it says the above referenced rates and charges plus the surcharge for capital improvements constitute the management fee. The parentheses comment is the water quality fee of $5,600 or $80 per customer. That was, I'm not really sure, we weren't sure what that water quality fee, if that was included in the management fee.
Yeah. Boy, this should be just in one little separate.
This
appendix.
has to be very, very, yes. It has to be
Carefully
laid out
spelled out.
very easy for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Suffolk County needs to make an appendix of all the impacts,
Mhm.
financial, and then we can, better analyze it. What do you think?
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, if we jump over to 7.4, we asterisked any and all miscellaneous fees billed. And we asked, what are some examples of miscellaneous fees? So that's what we're going to ask.
Okay, yeah. All right.
And then if we jump down to 8.2, if anybody has, are we ready to do that? Or anybody got any questions on anything?
I was going to say, with regard to 7.4, why don't we just reference the rules and regulations to see the fee schedule?
They cite, yeah.
I don't think we have to ask them for examples of miscellaneous fees. Why don't we, why don't we just check?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because my comment on this section was just, we have access fees, but theirs don't have the same. So again, we have a different commercial access fee, but they do not differentiate. So can we keep that?
Right.
There was some question in 8.2, the value of the capital improvements made under paragraph 2.1 shall be based on a 25-year life. But somewhere else, and then the next sentence, it says, the value of replacements, ... based upon a 35-year life. I don't know that we're clear on the difference of the value of capital improvements are based on 25-year life, but the value of those improvements shall be computed at original cost, less depreciation based on a 35-year life. That, I don't know. Somebody explain that to me.
Those are
Yeah.
improvements made after the initial capital improvement project. And the 25 years is not, I don't think, a reflection of the life of the infrastructure. It's more reflective of the repayment period of 25 years.
It's an accounting, it's a depreciation number, right? I mean, a depreciation time period, right, Amber? Don't you think?
Well, the first one, the 25 is an amortization of the debt,
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
the 35 is a depreciation factor.
it's a depreciation, yeah. So
Yeah.
those are kind of baked in. Although I find this confusing. So we have value of capital improvements, 25-year life. Next sentence, though, it's improvements or other capital improvements. Do you think they don't mean improvements other than capital improvements? Or
It's as Joe said, those are the ones that they put in. Once we
After.
do the 1.7 million investment, then any additions and improvements that they put in, then those ones will get depreciated over 35 years. So if we
Okay.
ended this after 10 years, we'd have to pay what was left of the 1.7 million. And we actually do need to change the wording on that, because they're talking about the value of the capital improvements, and I want to change that to the remaining debt on
right,
our initial investment, because you could have a different depreciation schedule for 25 years versus the debt service. And we
Yeah.
want it to mirror the debt service, because I'd hate for us to, put 1.7 million in, but then the value, is 1.2 million, but we only owe $1 million. So we end up paying 200,000 if we should terminate. So that wording needs to get changed. But so if we terminated after 10 years, if we owed $1 million, we'd have to pay that. Plus, then if they put another 200,000 in, we would have to look at what was the depreciated value on that and pay for that
Okay.
as well.
yeah, that's fair.
So you're gonna change that, right, Amber?
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that.
Um, 8.3, the asterisk, Squash shall have the option to purchase from the town the entire operating plant distribution facilities and real property owned by the town and leased to the Suffolk County Water Authority. This is, I'm assuming this isn't in the event of default.
Hmm.
If the town doesn't acquire the capital improvements made by SQA at the end of the initial term or any renewal, the SQA shall have the option to purchase from the town the entire opera. I'm not even sure why that's in there. If someone does understand that and could explain it to me.
If we want to walk away from the agreement with them, doesn't that sound like they have the right of first refusal to buy it all? If, we don't renew it, the term ends and we don't renew it, or at the end of a subsequent renewal period, they have the option, another way to put that, the right of first refusal to purchase.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
So Bob DiStefano, how would this be worded more carefully? So that we're not selling ourselves out here.
Okay, I'm doing this sort of on the fly.
Well, basically, it's saying if the town doesn't want the system anymore.
At the end
Not
of the
saying there's no default or anything. It's just if the town chooses to get out of the water business 100%,
Oh, yeah.
this is the end
giving
of,
the option, they have the option to buy it from us.
you're correct. This is the end of, this is end of term. It's not at default during the term.
Right.
So when the term ends, if there's anything that we have left to pay on the debt, then we have to pay the debt. If we choose not to do that and take ownership of it, then the Suffolk County Water has the first option to purchase.
I think what I find confusing is in the event the town does not acquire the capital improvements made by the Suffolk County Water Authority, we have been acquiring these improvements through our payment of the loan.
In other words, when the agreement's up, Lisa, if we say, we don't take the system back.
Right.
you
And
know,
pay it according to the outline in 8.2 and pay for the stuff that's been done as per
Or
8.2.
even if we did pay for it, BJ, I mean, it just, at the end of
We
the
are paying
contract,
for
does the town want to be in the water business? If not,
Right.
they could
Well,
sell
but
it
it's
to
an
them.
option at that point. I think that's what
Right.
8.3 is saying, right? Yeah.
The idea is we can't
I think the
sell
way
it
it
to somebody
works,
else. It's really the point here.
What'd you say, Bob?
They're really trying to get at the idea that they don't want us to, take all the improvements and then sell it to somebody else.
Right. Right. And not pay for it.
Right. Maybe the best way to do that, if it's confusing, it's because I could rewrite it 10 different ways and all of them would be subtly different. So I think that maybe the best way to handle that again is to talk to them and ask them to clarify what they mean by this.
That'd be good. Even if they could give us a couple of examples. Nothing like an example.
I think what they're trying to get at is at the end of the contract, this is Andrew Chapman, at the end of the contract, if there are unamortized costs of what they've paid for, we have to pay those.
Okay.
All the stuff that we've paid for, in other words, any unamortized costs of the 1.7 million that we've done up front, we don't have to pay that again.
Okay.
If we don't pay for the unamortized costs of what they have paid for, then they have the right to take the system for the unamortized costs of what we have paid for. Now, at the end of 40 years, our improvements will have been fully amortized.
Mhm.
So what that basically means is that at 40 years, we have to pay them back for the unamortized costs of what they've paid for. And if we don't, they get the system for nothing.
Mhm,
That's the way I read it.
mhm. Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, I made a note, let's clarify that with Joe.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay with, let's get their impression of what they're trying to get at here.
Right,
Yeah, because the next sentence, the value shall be determined to be the original cost as paid by the town, less depreciation.
Yeah.
They're getting a real deal there. Yes.
Yeah. It will
Original,
have less value, it'll have less value depending on its age, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying?
That would all depend on, when this occurred.
Yeah.
all right, so we're gonna get clarity
right.
from SQA on this.
Yeah.
I think it's very important that the customers who are paying for this understand what this means. I won't be here in 40 years. I doubt anybody will be, any one of you, but it's still for posterity. We have to be clear about the language.
Debbie Downer.
I know, sorry. We're guardians of the future, BJ. So which leads to the asterisk that was put there and the question which may or may not be satisfactorily solved in your minds. Does the town have the right, want to sell water service assets at unamortized or any cost for future administrations to unravel? Do we have the right now to do that 40 years down the line? Because this, in our estimation, this only benefits SQA, not the town. What provision for increased property value is there in this clause? And who benefits it?
Well,
So-
increased property value is covered there. Because the only thing that's going to increase is real property value, right? Everything else is something that is a depreciating asset. Unless I'm missing something. So the value of any real property, physical land, will be at the market value at the date that the transfer would occur. So whatever we define market value as. What?
If we go back to section 8.3, the value of such assets shall be determined to be the original cost as paid by the town.
Right.
What does that, and to Bob's point, what does original mean? What are we looking at? The cost at the beginning of what, at what period along this agreement are we looking at? How to determine this original cost?
I would say it's got to be the 1.7 million we're paying for improvements.
Well, we're talking about property here, though, not necessarily the infrastructure value.
But any property they're saying will be conveyed at the time of the conveyance at market value, which you arrive at usually through an appraisal, or you can agree in our town to use assessed value because we assess, annually. So that would capture any land value increases.
What property are we
sentence.
talking about here?
We don't have any yet, but if we do have some, I don't know, is there real, right?
Oh, it would be the property that they're going to purchase from us, which would mean the property that the pump house now sits on.
The wells, yeah. That's what
Yeah.
the golf
Well, the
course.
wells are still town property.
Yeah.
I don't know what the status of that would be in 40 years, but certainly the property that the pump house now sits on, that actual square of land is owned by the town, the district, if you will.
The
That's
district.
real property.
Right. And then, so, look ahead 35, 40 years, and what's that little piece worth if it's not underwater? At that time, it is covered by the highlighted in red sentence, that you've captured any increase in the value of that through that one sentence.
If you don't want to alienate the property, rather than saying that you'll transfer the real property, you could add a statement that, in the event this occurs, that the town will grant easements for the use of facilities that are on town land.
Hmm.
Can you put that language in there? Bob, in your mind, what you want to put in there. Can you
Okay.
actually literally type that in?
I actually can't. I only have a PDF, but I can email it to you.
Can you just email that language to me and we'll put that in?
But there is language in there that the Suffolk County Water Authority may limit its acquisition of property to an easement interest for so long as the property is needed for public water supply purposes.
Yeah,
So, I mean, we do have something that's in there. Are we saying
Yeah.
that we want to always
May,
keep the
but that's-
property?
That's at their discretion, isn't it? When it says may?
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. If we don't want to ever give them why don't we just change that?
We'll limit it.
Then the town will limit.
Right.
At the discretion of the town may yeah. Okay.
Okay. I think that's more satisfactory. I'm still not satisfied. Do the town representatives feel it is in their purview to stipulate what's going to happen 40 years down the line? I mean, I know that there's nothing static, everything changes all the time, but is there a way that this document, does that make this document so firm that there is no ability for future town administrations to change the clauses, to change the details, to change the status of the district? Am I reading too much into this?
feels like just the right amount of choice versus a contract that holds you to some obligations.
Okay. Then our the next clause, or the next suggestion or comment was these 8.2 and 3 make it impossible to terminate the lease if there was a will to do so.
They do?
I don't think it make it impossible. It make it expensive.
I'm sorry?
It might make it expensive. I don't think it makes it impossible.
Most assuredly, it makes it expensive.
To the best of my knowledge, when they made this initial inquiry, when we first started this process months and months ago, I never remember, I always remember the Suffolk County Water Authority saying, at any time, if you wanted to terminate the lease, this would be the ramifications. And the biggest one being paying back of the infrastructure stuff that we had put into it. But they never made it sound as if it was impossible to terminate or difficult to terminate. So, I mean, I think we need to remind them of that. There needs to be enough flexibility in this thing that if we're not satisfied, we could terminate the lease with the least amount of, obviously, any financial investment that Suffolk County Water made in the infrastructure would have to be paid back. But other than that, it should be a fairly easy process. That was the way I remember the initial discussions going.
Well, nothing in this makes it hard. It just is a formula that they've laid out, which seems fair. I mean, it's what they put into it, less depreciation. That all seems fair to me, if you want out of it.
But is reading it like, yes, there is a formula, but it's either at the end of the term or terminated for any legal cause prior to the expiration. So what would be a legal cause? Like, I see what you're saying, Lisa. There's nothing.
Or is terminated for any cause whatsoever, no legal. Or is terminated for any cause prior to the expiration. So it almost doesn't.
Do we need to give notice? Like if we decide to at will terminate it, do we need a period of notice?
Sure, and I think they mentioned that at the beginning, but I don't remember that we had to base it on any legal reason why. We might be just dissatisfied or find another way to go. but I don't remember it being predicated on any legal reasons. Yes, but we do have to give notice. And I forgot.
Where in the agreement do you see that?
I didn't see the notice anywhere. I'm looking back over it.
No.
Yeah, I
No
am
notice.
too.
I'm just quoting, to the best of my knowledge, quoting what they quoted to us when this process started. Jerry, am I wrong on that?
Yeah,
Well, if they quoted it and it's not in the contract, then.
that's what I'm
Right.
trying to, yeah.
Well, that's why we're going over this. So
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying they said there had to be some sort of notice given, which would you do
Yeah.
anyway?
that's
mean,
reasonable, though. That's a
Yeah, it
very
is totally
reasonable.
reasonable.
90
Totally.
days or whatever that, period is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's reasonable. But it wasn't predicated on any specific reason why we wanted to terminate.
Neither is this.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't see there's any terminated for any cause whatsoever.
What
In
section are you
8.4.
looking at, BJ?
What's that?
What
8.4,
section?
8.4, 8.4. Sorry.
and I think it also, it leaves open who's doing the termination. Can they terminate? Can we terminate? Or can both parties terminate for whatever, for any reason?
Now,
Yes?
check out the term section.
It certainly looks like it's open to what you're saying, Lisa, that it's not saying the town, this agreement is not renewed or terminated, not by who, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna put in there who terminates and what kind of notice there is, if
We'll
any.
just have a little discussion on that. What would change in anybody's mind materially if it's delineated, one party or the other? If it's not left open like it is? Is there some ramification that I'm missing? It almost seems like it's fine that it's left open. Who terminates?
Well, I
I think if the rate structure got totally out of whack, I
Yeah.
obviously remember that, when improvements are made by Suffolk County Water Authority, it impacts the entire membership of Suffolk County Water. So if they're doing something in Babylon and Huntington and Suffolk County Water, and they're making an improvement, ultimately, it impacts the rates of all users of Suffolk County Water.
Mhm.
So, if the rates, one of the selling points was that he was saying we could do this for less and still maintain your infrastructure, to the best of I'm paraphrasing, but he's saying we could do it for less than what you're charging. And we could correct some of these infrastructure issues for the same price of what you're paying now, kind of thing. But obviously, with the amount of infrastructure that needs to be done, that's why there's this, $1.7 million thing. But
Okay, oh yeah, no, I get that, but what I'm wondering is 8.4, if it said, I'm just saying, if this agreement is not renewed by the town or by Suffolk County Water is what we're looking for, I'm not sure why we need to add by anybody. If the agreement's not renewed, full stop, by either one of us, these are the things, that we're gonna happen.
Well,
I
let me
made it. Go
I
ahead,
just
Lisa.
like to add to that.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, Suffolk County Water Authority decides to terminate for any reason. We don't know 40 years what's going to happen. We just
Right.
don't.
Right,
If, for example, the authority goes under, who knows?
Yeah.
Then we're liable to pay back the authority all of the money that they put into the infrastructure.
not all of it, it'll be less some amount, right?
Well, okay,
Yeah,
but we have to pay it back. And when we asked Joe about the timeline for paying back, it has to be almost immediately.
Right.
So therefore, we would be on the hook for payback. Just saying.
We'd almost have to float a bond.
Yeah,
We
it
would
would be
have to
at the point we would probably
absolutely.
bond it.
Yeah,
I made a note next to this language concerns Joe P. My feeling is trying to be a worst case scenario. What if the evil empire, Suffolk County Water, decided to force our hand, and as soon as they put all the the improvements in and they did whatever they had to do, they terminated the agreement, And number one, we'd have to pay them back, and number two, we'd have to run the water district, which is the reason we're trying to deal with them. So I think we need to, and that's obviously worst case scenario. So I think we need to really clarify what this whole thing says.
Okay.
And then jumping down to that,
Where?
To the continued ownership, but there is no ownership. I'm just trying to see where I found that.
Suffolk County retains the right.
Terminated to.
Continued ownership, if you terminate the agreement and you don't pay them for what they invested, they maintain ownership of the improvements, the equipment that they installed. That's their consolation for you not paying them.
Yeah. So then are we saying that they, and this just needs, I think we need to be really understanding about this, that they own the infrastructure. Okay, this is a lease agreement. We are leasing the district and
They own it till we pay for it.
These are subsequent investments in infrastructure. So if they invest in a new pump beyond the 1.7 capital improvements, they own that particular pump, and it has a 35-year life. And if you terminate the agreement, then there's 10 years left. You have to pay them the value of what's left on that.
Okay, so
Otherwise,
do we have a value on our
maintain
current
ownership.
infrastructure? We need to have a value on our current infrastructure. Do you follow what I'm saying?
No.
We need to have a value attributed for the property, for the wells, for everything. What is our district worth now? So at some point in the future, we can depreciate that value. We're not going to pay because we own something. Does the
I'd
town
say it's
own
fully
something?
depreciated by now. No?
Amber, what do you think?
I'm not sure I follow to what purpose we need to value the existing assets.
Yeah, they're not buying the current
Because-
assets, Lisa.
But
You
there's
just-
an
you-
ownership to the
We're talking
continued
about the things
ownership
they
of
put
the-
in later.
Okay, all right, good. Just hold that thought. So what I'm saying is they have $1.7 million worth of infrastructure and improvements they're doing to a system. All right,
Correct.
that we're going to be paying for. But if this, if they, for example, wanted to buy the system, buy the district, if the town wanted to sell, what portion of the district that we now own would be deducted from that sale price? Well, I mean, not just the property, but I mean the whole, all of the piping, everything that we had.
Everything that you currently own that remains at the time, they would have to pay the value that it was the original value of. They would then the other would be a calculation as what was remaining on the amortization.
But don't we need a value now to know what that would even be in 40 years? And do we have that value? I think
do
it's
not
pretty
know about
important that we
Yeah.
have a value attributed to the district right now.
Amber, do we have a value of the system?
I'd have to go back to the financial
I'm
statements.
sure
and
we
see
do
if-
for insurance purposes.
Yeah, I would expect so.
Yeah. Although it's going to be, I mean, at the end of 40 years, it's going to be fully depreciated.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's only in the next 35 years that this comes into play.
I still think it's something that we need to have on hand and know for even 25 years down the line. I think it's just our due diligence and responsibility to have that information.
The way I read this agreement, there is no value attributable to the system now. The only value will be the unamortized original cost of the 1.7 million of upfront capital improvements. There's no inherent value in the system other than that. as far as these termination provisions read.
I think the other thing is that, I think the pumps are remaining. Is there much else going to be remaining of the existing system?
Oh,
After
I
they
don't know that we, well,
1.7?
yeah, the
Yeah.
infrastructure will be. The piping, the transport system, I mean,
So the pump house, all the infrastructure, the land.
Everything is being replaced. It's a full replacement of the distribution system. You have some wells in the pump house. But
no,
there's-
Joe, the transport system isn't being replaced. It's only going to be continued. We have new, 3-inch or 4-inch pipe that services 2/3 of the district. They're not going to be replacing that. There's no need for
I
it.
don't think it's 2/3 of the district, but the current capital improvement calls for a near full replacement of the distribution system.
No, it calls for 4 and 5, 4 being from the pump house around the corner up to the Calibro, and the other, and number 4 being the remaining area down West Neck Road, Behringer and Stearns Point. There's no indication, or there's no provision that, or even conversation about them replacing the pipe that's been put in the ground, that was really only put in the ground like 10 years ago. So that is, we paid for that. And anyway, I'm putting that out there. I'm not the accountant. So I'm going to just pose that I think that we need to have a value put on the system, whether or not it's fully depreciated at the time of termination. If there is a time of termination, I think that we need to be cognizant of that.
Okay, I made a note of that.
The other thing to make a note of is what Joe just said and what Lisa just said. There's a discrepancy between the two of them, between what's being replaced with the distribution system. We need to quantify that and spell that out, exactly what we're getting here. Is it the entire system, or just like Lisa said, areas 4 and 5, phases 4 and 5?
Well, on the billing analysis, Jim, that Amber had drawn up, it says water mains 4 and 5.
Okay.
But we definitely want to ask that question.
Yeah.
And there's going to be more, there's going to be definitely more adjustments made to the system once they have the agreement. So the last point that we had was Section 9 insurance. How do these terms differ from any or all of the insurance currently enjoyed by the district? Will this mean a rate, fee, surcharge increase for the customers presently or in the future?
All of these numbers are under the liability limits the town insurance already has.
So would that mean a no, that there will not be an increase?
No, there's no need for a new policy here.
So how does this work, Bob? That the policy that the town takes out on the district, this town would still have to maintain, right?
Right, it's a general policy. It covers all town assets.
Is there any way that SQA could insist on greater coverage at some point in the future for any reason?
Yeah, well, it says on number 3, the limits provided shall be reviewed and increased as deemed appropriate by Suffolk County Water during the term of this agreement and any extensions thereof.
So it can be.
Can be.
It can be. Where did you say that is, Jerry?
Top of the page on the next page, number III 3, right above 9.2.
Yep. We did.
First
all
sentence of the next page.
Right. So again, I'm going to put in notification of this increase.
Basically, they have to have the same insurance we have. That's what it's saying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then 10.4 we had highlighted, but I think I don't think we need any explanation. It's pretty satisfactory.
Yeah, it's a pretty standard term
Yep.
for contracts.
Okay, there's only three items left, and Andrew, I'm going to let you weigh in on this because if Andrew's still here, because these were points that he had made. The town's rights regarding extensions and improvements need to be defined so the town preserves its ability to manage resources used by many. So if we put the clause about town district approval and involvement at the beginning of this agreement, that should cover that. Any and all extensions and improvements to the water district need to be defined.
Yeah, I think you have to insert the district there, definitely.
To the district,
Right.
need to be defined and
The town's rights regarding extensions and improvements to the district need to be defined so the town preserves its ability to manage resources used by many.
got it.
But where are we inserting that?
I
Well,
think that's
in one, somewhere in one, right? Or whereas.
And Andrew?
yeah, I think that's a new section that starts with notwithstanding anything in this agreement to the contrary. So it it basically trumps everything. And it says that the town would have to approve any extensions of service outside the district, any amendments to the district boundaries, construction of any facilities outside the district. What they would probably come back to you and say is, as to that last piece, you need to let us build things that are necessary to serve people in the district. And I personally think that would be okay. Because if they can make the case, they're going to be serving 70 customers in the district. If they can make the case that they need to build something outside the district to serve those 70, that strikes me as reasonable.
So Andrew, do we need to put in place all the wordage you just said, or is that understood?
I would say, notwithstanding anything else in this contract,
Mm-hmm.
town approval shall be required for any extensions of service outside the district and any improvements or construction of any facilities outside the district, unless necessary to serve people in the district.
Andrew, could
Yeah.
I ask you to write that down and send it?
Sure. I think I did. You've got it somewhere in an email.
Okay, I'll look for it.
I had a couple of other issues when you would like me to contribute them.
So we have two more. Let's finish those, then you can go, Andrew, okay?
Yep.
Andrew, could you just repeat that one more time for us? I got most of it. Notwithstanding anything else.
Notwithstanding anything else in this contract, prior approval by the town shall be required. If for SCWA to construct, to extend service outside the district, or to construct any facilities outside the district, unless necessary to serve customers in the district.
Okay.
Is that arguable? Because they may come back and say, we need to do this because to facilitate service to the customers, to bring, as they say, to bring our level of service up to up to the level of comfort that we feel needs to be, we need to operate from.
All we can do, Lisa, is
Throwing that
raise
out
the
there.
issue and see what they come back with.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and this is also Andrew's contribution. I think I just abbreviated it. The town should not face a financial burden at termination, particularly given that the West Neck Water District customer will be paying for the initial capital improvements. If Andrew wants to elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure, this is a lease. And under a lease, the lessee gets the right to use the assets for the term, and at the end of the term, the assets come back to the owner. And the way these payment scheme mechanism is set up in section 8.2 and 8.3, we've just got to be very careful that there's no real burden or penalty on the town at the end. And so I'm okay with the unamortized cost of the capital improvements, the town that are funded by SCWA, that the town has to pay those to get out to end this, as long as the other language is in there, which says that any capital improvements outside the district have to be approved by the town. So my overarching concern here goes to their enabling legislation. They explain to us that as a matter of their enabling legislation or New York state law, I don't know where it is, they have the right to provide water service anywhere in Suffolk County where there isn't a system already providing it. So that's their legal authority. They haven't been on Shelter Island before, running water service here and there, because it's very hard for them to justify that capital improvement to the rest of their customers. But once they come on the island, they've got a service obligation on the island. And so they have a financial platform, they have a platform from which to grow. That may be fine. I just think the town ought to be at the table when that happens. And so that's the importance of that language that I gave you, because this is a 40-year deal. And we don't know really where this is going. And so my recommendation would be that the town is at the table during that period of time. There
Do
are
you
a couple.
think that is satisfied by the clause that we wanted to put in, Andrew?
I think so, because the town has explicit approval rights if they want to go outside the district. So if somebody comes along outside the district and says, I want to put in 5 homes, or I want to put in 25 homes, and I want water from Suffolk County Water Authority by extending the district, the town would have to say yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That particular, those houses or whatever else is right or wrong. I'm just saying that the town needs to be at the table in making that decision.
Mhm.
I would caution against the town signing this lease and inadvertently stepping away from those kinds of decisions.
Absolutely. Good points.
Couple of other points. One of the things we're getting from Suffolk County Water Authority is capital expenditures to maintain future water quality compliance. So if there's some, 5 years ago, nobody knew what PFOAs were. 10 years ago, nobody really knew what MTBE was.
Mm-hmm.
The industry is always finding new contaminants and then testing for them and dealing with figuring out ways to treat them. One of the advantages of bringing Suffolk County on the island or West Neck Bay is that all of that becomes their problem. They would have to put in invest the CapEx to meet future water quality requirements, whatever they are. And I think that ought to be in the agreement explicitly. I wouldn't want there to be some kind of force majeure argument that surfaced in 5 years from now. Oh, we never knew about this or we never knew about that. It's too expensive for us. That's actually our reason for entering into, one of our reasons for entering into this lease. So that goes to the quality comments that were made earlier today. And I would just want something in the agreement that says Suffolk County agrees during the term of this lease to provide water to at its costs, capital and operating costs, to provide water of a quality in compliance with applicable federal, state, and local regulations.
Right. I mean, they need that compliance to operate in as is. However, it doesn't hurt to have that language in there.
Yeah.
It says it.
Yes.
You don't think, wait a minute, I thought this was covered in 5.3 E. Okay, so manage and supervise the daily operations of the district water system, including maintenance of the existence, taking all appropriate measures to ensure compliance with all regulatory requirements. Would that be, an additional contaminant is identified?
I would just say at all water quality requirements as they may change from time to time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, you're being more explicit, and that's a good thing.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And this is not necessarily talking about quality. It's talking
Right.
about infrastructure maintenance. So,
Well, it's water supply.
I've just seen, because of the importance of these evolving water quality regulations to the industry, I
Yes.
have seen this issue called out more explicitly in agreements like this.
mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think there should be a explicit right of termination. It's odd to me there is no termination language or definition of cause, optional termination, and so forth. Usually agreements like this have termination at the end, termination for cause, termination at the options of the various parties, and what's due between the parties on those different events. I think that the agreement needs to be more explicit on that point. Let me see if that's, and then,
8.4.
sorry.
That's covered in 8.4. And so I think what you're asking for is more explicit or more specific information about that, about termination clauses.
Well, usually in these agreements, there's a section termination. And
Okay.
it defines, optional termination, termination for cause, termination at expiration, and so forth. It's pretty explicit. And when we were going through it in our conversation, we were reading a lot into some of the sentences there.
Mm.
And I just think it needs to be more explicit. The last comment is relates to water transfers on and off the island. And I would suggest that there be just basically a prohibition, so that that they can't build a pipeline and take water off the island to either the North Fork or the South Fork. And similarly, they can't bring water onto the island from either the North Fork or the South Fork. Now, I know that sounds kind of extreme, but 40 years is a long time, one. And two, if that becomes appropriate and a good course of action during the 40 years, the agreement can be amended. It's just going into it now. I'm suggesting that issue just be set aside.
Yeah, I would agree with Andrew. When we started the very initial discussions Joe and I had with Suffolk County Water, that we told them the deal breaker was no water could ever leave Shelter Island. So I don't think it hurts to put that in the agreement.
They've not opposed that, but I would caution you in your language about that because we currently force folks to buy water from a truck that comes from Suffolk Water elsewhere. So, we need to be mindful of the aesthetics of our position on this. We don't want anybody to take water off the island, but we currently import water from Suffolk County water hydrants to fill our pools and to irrigate our lawns. So we need to be aware of how we push this policy on other folks. It's not really
That's something we're gonna have to do, aside from Suffolk County Water, that we as a town board are gonna have to decide how to handle that.
Yeah, I just, we're thinking comprehensively, it's unfair of our own town policy to expect other communities to allow us to use their water to fill our pools, but when we're signing this similar agreement, we're saying, no, you can't, we would prevent you from taking water off of our island. And that would extend to the hydrant policy, which we don't have to worry about now, but, it's come up with Deering Harbor. These are other considerations we need to make.
Well, Joe, I know that I'm pretty sure that Deering Harbor in their contract has the stipulation, no transport on or off Shelter Island. So it's not like it wouldn't be a new to Shelter Island, for example. And also I would argue that if East Hampton enters into an agreement with Suffolk County Water, it's up to them how they want to word their contract. If they want to sell water to Romansky or, the water transports, that's really that's their discretion to do so.
Now, I understand Joe's point, but it does alleviate many of the concerns and fears, apprehension on the part of residents about this very, very issue. So I think it's a good thing. My other comment is it's simply a matter of time before the North and South Fork put their foot down and disallow this practice of, taking water from their hydrants to fill your pools on Shelter Island. I just think that that's something that's not too far away, unfortunately, but I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later.
My recommendation is just to add to Andrew's language with this particular point to perhaps mandate some sort of town approval on the transfer of water on and off Shelter Island, because there may be a time when it is beneficial to us. And
I think it's the one way. It's one way. You can't take water off, but water on, I would like not to address that.
For instance, Suffolk Water is forced to make substantial capital improvements in our neighboring communities to deal with the surge of water demand that's happening on the North and South Fork in the summertime. Some of them are self-imposed. There are large irrigation policy gaps in those communities, but Shelter Island's demand is a portion of that problem. We take several tanker trucks a day of water from our neighboring communities, and that's taxing Suffolk County Water's infrastructure in those places. Now, that's a fair argument that those communities maybe lack the policy to govern it, but that's still, it still represents an exploitation of Shelter Island's water use to rely on water being trucked in, but also banning water from either being moved on and off Shelter Island in this capacity. So I think we need to also recognize there may be a time in this 40-year window that we need water to be trucked on and off the island. I don't know what that's for exactly, but I would just caution the complete restriction of that and add the caveat that, without town approval.
So I'm sorry I opened this rat's nest, but maybe what we could do is just talk about a pipeline. Stay away from the whole trucking issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Joe, what we should do is, formalize what we verbally agreed to, that no water will ever leave Shelter Island.
Yeah, that's the crux of it, I think. I know what Joe, you're talking about fairness, but I think that our goal here is protection, and they're kind of different.
And again, if and when there was, some need that we're not seeing, it could always go to public referendum.
Mhm.
Well,
So
and
I would suggest that we put language in here that, the water stays on Shelter Island.
That's all I had, and I I really want to compliment everyone who's involved in this for their thorough analysis of this contract. These are difficult deals to cut. So
Yeah,
good on you for how you're all approaching this. I'm serious.
Andrew, thank you
Andrew,
for
thank you
all
for
your
your
input. And
Yes.
Lisa, I especially want to thank you publicly for,
Yeah.
all you've put into this, but more so, all you've put into West Neck Water for the last 25 years. Because I don't think people understand that without you and Dunbar and a few other people, this just would not have worked. It was 100% hands-on. It was something that the town never really was involved in. You did it all. And it's pretty amazing, really, when we talk with Suffolk County Water now that, the needs of the district and what they need going forward, how you kept it together for 25 years, basically on a shoestring. So I don't think we can thank you enough for all you've done.
Well, I'm going to take all that. Thank you.
You should.
Take it all.
You should.
You should.
But
You
I
definitely
do want to, I just want to, stipulate, or rather say that since we all paid for the water, that was the principal reason why we stayed engaged.
Yeah, but everybody paid for it, but you and Ann really put your heart and soul into it.
Well,
No.
thank you, Jerry, for that. And I guess just to wrap it up, I will make an amendment. I will put this all together in another document that we could then take to Suffolk County Water and then have them respond to some of these questions that only they can answer. So I would ask Amber, if you could send me your readjustments and calculations. And I'm going to ask Bob DiStefano if you would send me your comments with regard to the legal language. And Andrew, I will look for what you already sent. And if I can't find it, then I will ask you to rephrase and send to me.
So Lisa and Joe, do we want to have one more go around with that before we meet with Suffolk County Water? Or are we ready to meet with them once we get this, written up the way you just said, Lisa? Or how do you want to proceed?
Why don't you send me, let's send to one place a consolidated list of all of our comments and questions, and then I'll coordinate with Suffolk Water for a follow-up. We'll send them the questions, and then we'll also get a meeting scheduled on the calendar for follow-up.
Okay.
So Joe,
I see John.
do you
Go
want
ahead.
to receive that, or you want me to receive that information?
I would like you to receive, compile, make any final changes you want as a result of today, and then please send to me one file.
Okay, I'm just telling you all, I'm going to endeavor to have this done by the end of this week.
Okay.
Because we have a February 28th deadline. So I really want to make sure it moves.
Sure.
Okay.
Jerry,
John Kerr, I see your hands up. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I just have a concern as a community member about the use of other shelter island lands for possible well sites. And I think the way you worked it out with your language, that you felt it would have to be approved by the town. And then you decided that you would think that the supervisor of public works would be making that decision about siting. I'm wondering if it's really wise to have all that, I'll use the word power, I don't know what else to use, in just one person's hands. I wonder if there isn't a better way of helping site that well on town land, or maybe there should be more input than just, okay, we need a new well, go to the current supervisor of public works, where do you want to put a hole? Got it, we're done. I just don't know if it should be quite that simple. Just a comment and a question.
John, I think the reference was more to individual homeowners that, like down in Montclair, that couldn't find water on their property and needed to go maybe across the street to the town shoulder. I don't think it was for
Gary,
public wells.
it was concerning 6.4 on page 5. If they're going to have to expand or move off the present properties that they're using to either expand their system or elsewhere. So 6.4 is what I'm concerned about.
My notes show that it's town board approval.
Right, that's what we changed, yep.
Yes.
But
And
I
it's
thought you
not-
said the siting was done by the supervisor or superintendent of public works.
In the
That's
past
only-
for single wells. In
For
the past
residential.
for single wells, yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
on town price, residential wells on town property, but this is bigger and therefore we want town board approval. So we agree with you.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Lori? Lori, did you want to say something? Hands
Yes,
up.
Howard, I'm just trying to get my video up so you can see me. Okay, well, let me turn my video on. I have questions regarding customers. When are the customers going to be able to comment and or ask questions?
They could ask questions today. You can ask questions right now.
Okay. Well, as a customer of West Neck Water since 1997, I had some few questions. I'm not going to repeat some of the things you've already discussed because some of my questions were answered today. And I want to thank everybody for all the hard work that you've put into this so far, because I know what that takes. But I am concerned about customer notification and how many customers know what's really going on. We've only had in the last 6 months 3 notifications to customers, one of which was John Hallman's retirement and a 6-month temporary management plan, and the other 2 were the water being turned off for a flush the system. So unless the customers are paying attention to what the town board is doing and reading and have internet access to look at when meetings are, I'm not sure that everybody really understands that this is even being discussed, at least not the customers that I have spoken to, that I've run into. And I'm wondering how they're going to react when their bill is increased by, 200% or more. So, I mean, I think communications with the customers is essential as you work through this process. And I would recommend some sort of mechanism to do that.
Lisa, do you want to speak to that?
Well, in one of my communiques, I think in 2 of my communiques to customers, I told customers about the agreement or the arrangement with Suffolk County Water and invited them to get involved. And I think I posted the meetings that we would be talking with Suffolk County Water. I'd have to go back through my emails, but I'm pretty sure I've done that at least on 1 occasion, if not 2. I agree that the rate increase, which we don't really have yet finalized, but once it gets very specific, it does need to go out to the customers, whether it goes out with quarterly billings or a separate communique, not really sure, but as soon as it gets finalized, it certainly will be something that we want to send to customers. Right now, we have approximations of a 201% increase, but as we've covered in this discussion, Amber's going to get more specific about that. So that's what I think that customers will have to be, I think we'll have to be specific about what we're going to be paying.
Well, and that is one of my other comments. It's nice as it all sounds, and as of course as many improvements as everyone would like to make of the district, including myself. I question, what the customers within the district are going to be able to afford. If we're at 1.7, it's a little over $24,000 per customer, and that does not include operating costs or use. And the initial cost of improvements is increased by almost $400,000, according to what Suffolk County Water Authority is asking for. But there's only vague references, and some of the questions that you also have raised today were on my list, like how much of the distribution system is being replaced, because we all know that much of the water main has already been replaced.
Right, we covered
So
that.
it's, kind of those kinds of questions I think are important. And, the town, on other infrastructure projects has sought, the grants committee was involved and the grants writer. Are those avenues being explored? Maybe that's something Jim Culligan could answer, what other sources are being looked at to help pay for these improvements for the customers within the district.
Yeah, well, we're always looking at what infrastructure money is available, and the grant writer does look at that on a regular basis. If there's anything.
Has this project been discussed with them?
Yes, this has been discussed. Well, water infrastructure has been discussed, yes.
Then my next question is, in the West Neck Water class account, there was almost $150,000. And that was mentioned a couple meetings ago. I don't know if it was August or September, and that money, was a savings account basically for infrastructure improvements. But there's been no discussion of that of late, and nor is it in the financial analysis from what I could see. So if that money is customer money for infrastructure improvements, has that been factored in?
I can speak to that. It hasn't been factored in yet, but that is in the back of my mind. We do have a situation where part of the infrastructure surcharge is going to be coming from water usage. So if we have a shortfall, then the district needs to make up the shortfall. And so my initial thinking is that some of that money will be kept in reserve to cover any potential shortfalls in usages. If we have another COVID year where all the businesses shut down and we're not generating the revenues that are required to cover the surcharge. So we want to keep something in reserve there. But that's a discussion that we need to crank through some numbers and say, okay, if we cover this much, then we can release the rest of it and possibly use that for cutting down on the initial on the amount, the 1.7 million calculation.
Okay.
And I just want to say that reserve is not $150,000 anymore. Go ahead.
Okay. The next thing is, you touched on it a little bit, but the rates, and I think based on everything that I have read and I've heard today, I, as a customer, I'm a little confused about, the rates in its entirety in terms of what I would be paying and what rates I'd be paying for what. And there is some things that, the existing West Neck water rate, as you all mentioned, we had a conservation rate structure in there. And I think it's important to keep that. I do agree with you on that, because otherwise what incentive would there be to conserve water, which is what we've all tried to promote. But I also then look at, the Suffolk County Water Authority rules and regulations and how it interacts with this agreement. That's a 66-page document, most of which is irrelevant to Shelter Island. So I'm asking, why is that entire document being referenced, the whole 66 pages, that maybe only the things that pertain to Shelter Island should be used as that exhibit, because otherwise it's very confusing. And in terms of what Andrew Chapman had commented on, if you look at section 18, it clearly has rates for water trucks to sell water at $4,000 a truckload for water that us as the West Neck Water customers are paying for. So, the agreement in some places contradicts what's in the Suffolk County Water Authority's rules and regulations. And I'm not even sure how the West Neck Water rules and regulations fit in with either one of these documents, which prohibit, irrigation using West Neck water and other things that, our agreement, our rules and regulations, which were previously sanctioned by various town boards over the last 25 years hold. So
well, if I could just answer that, Lori, I think that in conversation with Suffolk County Water, we were told that our rules and regulations would no longer apply because they are the governing agency. So and the managing agency. So we would be operating under their rules and regulations. Now, if it was the will of the town to add to that, that would have to be a separate discussion. And I don't know legally, we can probably defer to Bob DiStefano, which takes, if you can even do that, or whose rules and regulations supersede.
Well, according to the Suffolk County rules and regulations, we can use water for irrigation. They can sell water. We can use water to fill pools. There's all these other things. That's why
that's their regulations, Lori. The town have its own restrictions that they
Well,
have.
that's-
We wouldn't do it by
That's exactly
regulation.
what I'm recommending, that some of those regulations you may want to consider keeping, because there's things in there that pertain particularly to Shelter Island, and the things that don't pertain to Shelter Island should really be removed.
Where the way that would work is it wouldn't be by regulation. We'd have to do it by local law with regard to irrigation and simply ban the,
Right,
you you update the irrigation section,
yep.
whatever other things you want to keep in those regulations.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Those are some of the questions that I have. I'm sure that I will have more, but I would like to digest what you all discussed today as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anita?
Thanks for having me and thanks for this hearing. Mike, I want to go back to the ability of Suffolk County Water to drill on other lands to meet the needs of the West Neck Water District. What is to stop them from, I live in Montclair, in the Monantic area. What is to stop them from saying they need to put a well in the Montclair colony to serve the need, to meet the needs of West Neck Water District?
The
They
town
would,
board.
they know for a fact that they can't do that because there's no water down there for them to take. And they would have to get town board approval to put a well in.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're putting that stipulation in 6.4 of the contract.
Except that you said that it was except to meet the needs of West Neck Water District. They need town approval except when they need to do it to meet the needs of West Neck Water. And that seems to me to put other communities at risk. They need to get town approval except for that.
I understand your premise, but in actuality, it's just the opposite. We're looking to protect as much of the island as we can. And so are they. In discussions with them about well fields, I mean, there are certain portions of the island they, you know, that we thought we might be able to use town land. They said, no, it's much too close to the
Yeah.
shore. So
It is 6.4 that addresses that, and it's within the district. We're gonna add town board, and it's within the district,
Right.
not.
Not
No,
outside.
I thought for that section it was
Changed
for the
it.
district.
We changed it
then-
for the district, yes.
Yeah, it's
Oh, for the
district.
district. Oh, okay, you're right,
But there is a different section, which I'm trying to find quickly, that talks about like, if the need can be met within the district boundaries,
Right.
there's a lesser requirement, but when you go outside of the district boundaries, on any town-owned land.
Yeah.
And it's-
But I think to Anita's point, because that is the discussion that we had, which is why I had within the district in there in the first place, to stay within the boundaries of the district and not have to, or not to go outside on other town lands to get water. But then in our discussion, if there is, for whatever reason, no water to be cited or no well sightings available to the district, then we could say, for example, go to Sagem's Woods. So I think that really needs to be looked at carefully and decide, because those two words make a difference. Is it for the district or within the district? And to Anita's point, I think that's something.
I think we had said for the district. And
did.
just
But
and then
that
just to follow up
implies-
on that, the majority of the wells for West Neck Water are out of the district already.
Nah,
Well, they are. They're at the golf course.
right, but they're 100 feet from the district,
They're out is out. Come on.
not according to the new map. Anyway,
Well, thank you for considering and in making this agreement, trying to also safeguard the needs of other communities. I mean, I think there has to be a balance, and I am hoping that our town government knows that, but I don't know that Suffolk County Water Authority has that as a primary value. So that's my concern, and that's all.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Okay. So Lisa, we'll get together and get all this together. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Okay,
Thank you.
next on the list, we have board member reports. I'll start. Next Monday at 1 o'clock, we have a Suffolk County Planning Commission Zoom meeting referral, the referral process and priorities. The ZBA Building Department and Planning Board will be attending. Any town board members want to go on and just let us know. We'll get you the Zoom invite. I mentioned already that Amber and I will be meeting with the Recreation Department to discuss moving forward with COVID restrictions. And that's all I have. Amber?
The Community Housing Board met last week. We had a resignation on the Community Housing Board. Someone's job changed and therefore could no longer serve. So we had interviewed last year and have a couple of people waiting in the wings while we were debating keeping the committee size to 5 or expanding to 7. Also with the the Community Housing Fund Advisory Committee, how everything was going to play out. So rather than interview for a new Community Housing Board member, we'd like to appoint one of the two that we kind of have waiting in the wings. But that would be an executive session discussion, but I just want to make everyone aware of it, that we won't be going out for interviews because we do have some very, good people in the wings. The energy at Thursday's meeting was really great. Research is beginning on community housing plans. They're like, the committee just has so much energy and so many ideas, and are starting to focus in on what they need to do from the Community Housing Board side of things, as well as get the Community Housing Fund Advisory Committee up and running. We do need additional members on that committee, and so the Community Housing Board is trying to pull together people that may be approached that would fit. We need somebody from banking, we need somebody from construction, possibly legal. So everyone, please, if you can think of somebody, contact them to see if they're interested, submit a resume. We'll be getting an advertisement out there as well, and on the town website and on social media. The Community Housing Board does have a special community housing license application that will be reviewed at their next meeting. I don't know if this is the first one ever or it's the first one in a very long time. So it's when somebody wants to have an accessory dwelling to be used for housing. So that's coming down the pike. And yeah, they're also reviewing Code Section 51, which is the community housing, just to look at, it was drafted a number of years ago. Not a lot has taken place, but with the initiatives that are being, made with potentially getting the funding if the referendum for the 0.5% gets passed, as well as, people are starting to think about these community housing license options, just to review the whole code to make sure, that it's not onerous, that, it protects where we need to have protection, but also may encourage some, relief on the housing side of things. And website, we met this morning, and I think just something to reiterate for the public is we've been trying to streamline our policies and procedures with respect to, what goes on the website and things of that nature. We had made the decision when COVID hit, we moved to, Zoom meetings and, meetings that didn't used to get recorded are now being recorded, and committee clerks, have more responsibility to, for minutes and postings and things like that. A decision was made initially to just put on the town website. We have a YouTube tab, so you can go back and look at town board work sessions, town board meetings, planning board meetings we've added. Those never used to be televised or, available for public viewing because they weren't recorded, as well as ZBA meetings, because there are two independent decision-making boards. So those will be on the YouTube channel that the town has. We are not at this point in time adding any other committees to be posted, because at some point we may be going back to in-person meetings. And so we didn't used to, have used the resources to record those meetings. So we have to think about, will we always have a hybrid option, not have a hybrid option? But of course, there's always costs associated with that, in-house staffing costs, maybe space constraints and things like that. So for the time being, we do committee meetings are being recorded via Zoom for, minute purposes, but we're only required to maintain those for 4 months. So right now, if you want to get a copy of a committee meeting that's not a paid board or decision-making board, you would have to submit a FOIL request. So different clerks have been handling things differently. We're trying to get a consistent policy in place within the town. So I just wanted to put that out there so people are aware of what the current policy is and, the considerations for going forward. And that's all that I had.
Thanks, Amber. Jim?
Yeah, Jerry, would ask Christina or somebody to update the capital planning and grants committee on our website. There's only been 2 or 3 monthly meetings that have been published in the last year there. If they need any help, I do have copies of them, but I think she has some of those copies. I would ask that they be updated. I went out to Real Point. Real Point finished up on Friday before the deadline of January 15th for the dredging. One of the things I noticed is that the chain going out there was not replaced. So you could literally drive your car out on that. It would be a very bad thing to find somebody driving out there in the middle of the night, and falling off the edge because the spine has been built up if somebody was to drive too close to the edge of that and put their vehicle out there. So I put a notice out to Brian to see if they get the chain put back up there. I called Dave Clark over the weekend to see if he said it would be taken care of today. Suffolk County has announced, and this comes out of the Department of Economic Development and Planning. This is a date issued on January 12th. This has to do with Suffolk County Shellfish Aquaculture Lease Program in the Peconic Bays and Gardner's Bay. There is a Zoom meeting scheduled for February 3rd at 6 p.m. You must register in advance for the Zoom meeting. We somehow need to get the word out to the shell fishermen or anybody on the island that might be interested in aquaculture leasing during the course of the next year. The focus of the meeting will be geared towards prospective lease applicants that are interested in submitting an application to obtain shellfish aquaculture lease under the 2022 lease application cycle. And so if anybody needs any additional information, you can contact me. And the last thing is on the Conroy House over in Silver Beach, taxes were just paid today or just in the last day or so. On that, the address, Bob, does hold up. The South Portland main address does hold up. Do we have any update on whether that information has been served to Mr.
They
Conroy?
attempted to serve him. There was no one there the other day. They're going to try again this week on the grounds that between COVID and
Okay.
the holidays that he might have been away.
Okay. But I just wanted you to know that, BJ was kind enough to come over, and just hand me that and confirm the address, which is the address which we have. And hopefully we can find him sooner rather than later and inform him of the situation at his residence, which is at Cozy Lane, which is very important that we talk to him.
No problem. So yeah, sometimes these guys, you have to kind of chase them down a bit.
Yeah,
So,
just please stay with it because, it's an issue that's gone on, for 2 years longer than it had to. Thank
EJ?
you.
No, not
You
this
good?
week. I'm good.
Okay. And Meg's has a family funeral today, so she couldn't be here. Okay, Bob, do you have anything for us?
no, Jerry.
Okay, Dottie? You good? Okay. Anybody in the audience have anything? Julia?
Nothing from me, Jerry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Pam?
Yeah, hi there, everybody. I guess my question is about this new definitions legislation and where we're going to sit with this now. Since we had the first public hearing, does that mean you're going to recess that public hearing, produce a new document, and then reconvene a new public hearing?
We discussed this earlier that we're gonna, Bob's gonna coordinate all the information he's gotten from yourself and everybody else, put it together. We'll discuss it at a work session, at future work sessions. And then obviously, if it's significantly different, then we'll have to set a new public hearing.
Okay, because it seems like the new, the latest of the 23rd of December has a bunch of new definitions that were added that weren't there.
Mhm.
Other ones were taken away. So I'm sort of expecting that you would
Right,
recess the first one and reconvene a new one once you have the paperwork all straightened out and
right. I think that's the way
laid
it's
up the way you
gonna,
want to
Yeah, that's
present it to
correct,
the
yeah.
public.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think you're right.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I only have one question on that West Neck Water
Yeah,
agreement, because I kind of looked at it and I was looking at Town Law 209Q, and I'm sure you don't have that in front of you, but if you could go to take a look at that when you're looking at this agreement. One of the things that it says is that it's subject to the approval of the state controller, where such approval is required. So I don't know if anyone's investigated that because of the size of the dollars on this project. It's in 209Q, section 6C. So I'm just gonna throw that out there to have you guys just take a look at that, because from the conversations today, my concerns about what I had seen in this agreement seemed to be addressed. Other than that,
thanks, Pam.
okay, thanks very
Anybody
much.
else? Okay, I need to make a motion to go into executive session. We have an interview for a position.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, thanks, everybody.